injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Hello, everybody.
Fish on First live here on a Friday night. Marlins Padres coming up on deck. As always, the show presented by Berger and Hicks. I'm Eli Sussman, hosting in this particular situation, heading into this 3-game set. Joined by Isaac Azut and Nate Karsmer, a couple of our super subs as well. Loud Miami fan, LMF, Chase, and also Parker Heiser. Both of you guys, great to see both of you right here. Get on with the show. It is the Luis Ariz reunion weekend, the Tanner Scott reunion weekends. A whole lot of fun at the ballpark. It's also a 90s night, a very highly anticipated throwback windbreaker ticket package. I haven't yet to see what those actually look like, but I know people are excited to be out there tonight. But yeah, it should be a fun weekend against an amazingly good, or I should say, at least a very hot Padres team as of late. First, as we usually do, I want to hop into the previous series, Marlins versus the Reds in a 4-game set right here. The Reds winning 3 out of 4. The guy that kind of overshadowed everything else in this one, the one-man wrecking crew, Ellie De La Cruz. I think he went 11 for 19 at the plate during this series, scored 7 runs in 4 games, bases, homers, all that stuff. Nate, I don't know if there's been like such a definitive series MVP in any series this entire year. Ellie was probably better than advertised, wasn't he?
He did it all. Like you said, I don't think there has been a more dominant player in one series the entire year on the bases, with the bat, even with the glove. Just he lit up Lone Depot Park, and he had 8 hits in the first 2 games, which I think that's the first time I've seen that in a very long time. That guy, as advertised, he had a lot of fans, obviously from the Reds community, of course, but when he was up to bat, at least the second game, cheers of Ellie the entire time, and he delivered. That guy's a very special player. And the series in general, kind of more what we should, expect of this group of Marlins, and not really split series against the Braves, Tatum series against Baltimore, but still some good signs, aside from the absolute blow-up that was yesterday's 10th inning. Of course, Jonah Bride looked even better at the plate. Xavier Edwards, unfortunately lost the on-base streak, but 2 hits yesterday, got right back on track. So still some encouraging signs, but it's the Reds. They had the best player in baseball for this past week. So Ellie's gonna Ellie, but the Marlins still in good shape. But it's gonna be another tough test with this Padres team, who is very hot as of late.
Yeah, and you see in that second game right there, Max Meyer took the loss. Isaac has kind of been leading the charge on Max skepticism, you could say, entering this year, despite all he did early on this year before getting sent down to AAA. It's now been a few starts since coming back, and I think any way you slice it, this was his worst performance as a starter in the majors in a very small sample right here. But what particularly went wrong for Max in this outing, and what are your concerns about him as a starter moving forward?
Well, yeah, that second part of that question, I don't know how long you have, but regarding that start in particular, just leaving everything up. And I know this Reds team is not an easy lineup to navigate through, so I will give him credit for that. But this looked like the AAA Jacksonville Max Meyer of May of this year, where he's just leaving his pitches up. The slider was not as crisp as usual. The good changeup was non-existent. Fastball very flat, low to mid 90s. And I'm sorry if the slider's not doing that 70 grade slider stuff. It's a pretty simple pitcher to hit. So I think everything went wrong in that outing in particular for Max. And what I just said is that those are my worries, that if that slider is not doing what it needs to do, It's very easy to eliminate his only weapon, in my opinion. I think if you put him in a situation where he doesn't have to see a lineup more than twice, you might see more success. So I don't know. I have my fears of him as a starter going forward, but I think they're going to give him every chance in the world for him to be started this year and next year. But, you're going to see some blowups like this once in a while. I think it's just a very limited ceiling for Max Meyer as a starter, unfortunately, because he's got one good pitch. And even then, there's some other sliders in this organization that are better, but he will have fantastic starts, for example, like the one he had right when coming back, and some of his ones earlier in the year in April, where, he's just throwing the slider 65, 75% of the time, and he'll be really effective at times. But more times than not, it's going to be sort of mid outings. This one was really bad, and I don't think his outings are going to be like this bad every time, but, these are going to happen.
Yeah, the biggest thing, like you said, is his inability to mix in his changeup and his sinker. He threw his sinker and his changeup, I believe, like a combined 20-something%. And you can't have that. If you're a big league starter, you cannot have a two-pitch mix, especially against professional hitters. They're going to sit on that. They're going to sit on the slider. They're going to sit on the first pitch fastball. And you saw it. I believe it was Stevenson. You can't throw first pitch sliders, get me over sliders, guys like that. Stevenson took that one into the seat. So if Matt really wants to be a starter, I was kind of harsh on my recap, but it's not going to work. You have to really start using the changeup or the sinker more, or it's not going to work. Really good bullpen guy with that fastball slider combo, but if he wants to be a starter in the bigs, he's got to figure it out.
Yeah, even with him not yet in the bullpen actually wasn't a huge issue in this series. They well, at times, okay, it was a mixed bag, because then that third game, that was the Valente Beozo show. He was great through five and 2/3. And then that seventh inning between both Cronin and Nardi, they set up that grand slam, and they clung onto the lead at the very end. Calvin Fauché got a save right there. And then in the final game, it was about 5 good innings from the pen before they just ran out of players. As we'll get into, there's been some turnover lately because they just ran out of guys that they could really trust. But even with all the trades, there are some that are getting the job done. For the meantime, LMF, even though Skip is not going to declare him so, it looks like Calvin Fauché is the closest thing this team has to a closer. How are you feeling about? He's been with this bullpen most of the year, even though he's kind of been under the radar to this point. How are you feeling? What's your confidence level in Fauché at this point, whether it's the rest of the season or even beyond, as somebody that could potentially be closer material?
Look, it's wide open right now. Give everyone a shot possible. How many opportunities are they actually going to get to close the game for the rest of the season is the real question.
Right.
I'm confident in them until I'm not, right? Is it going to be 2022 all over again, where you're playing a bullpen by committee or closer by committee? That was when it was Tanner Scott. I forget the name of the guy he was traded with. He was closing some games. Cole Sulser. He's the one who gave up that massive bomb to the Padres on Father's Day. I'm confident in him until I'm not, right? Give everybody the shot, and hopefully they find a needle in the haystack. More disappointed in Nardi's performance, to be honest with you, and him not getting the shot. But we'll see what happens.
I did want to also shout out Mr. Anthony Bender right here. It has gone under the radar. I was skeptical of him the first few months of this season, despite being the conductor of the original hype train back in 2021. Let the record show that I took him very seriously as a breakout player that year. As a rookie, he went on to that long scoreless streak. He didn't look like the same guy coming out of camp. His velo was a lot lower. His slider didn't really move the same way that it used to. And I felt like he was getting a little lucky early on. And then even when he struggled, it came at inopportune times. Very quietly, maybe not so quietly now, but very quietly, he is really rounded into exactly as dominant a pitcher as he used to be way back in 2021. I tweeted this out on my personal account a little earlier today. Last month and a half or so, the top relievers in baseball by fielder independent pitching, Bender, number 2 in all baseball, right there with AJ Puck
and Birch Smith.
And Birch Smith. So that's how you know you're in good company. I was as shocked as anybody by Birch Smith. Good for him, though. Somebody else that was squeezed out of this Marlins bullpen. I think this speaks to how crazy deep this bullpen was right before the deadline, where everybody had some value, and that's why a lot of them got traded. And then even one in Birch Smith that didn't have any, like they couldn't find a trade for him when ultimately they released him, and then the Orioles picked him up quickly. Minor league deal pushed him through. There's Bender, though. 1 run allowed in the last month and a half for him. It has lowered his ERA overall into the low 3s. The strikeouts are there, and he keeps the ball in the ballpark. So that's been a really good story. So he at this moment is not getting those closing opportunities, but I wonder if by the end of the year at some point, and certainly entering next year in spring training, like he could wrestle that away. That's been a nice reclamation. You don't want to call it a reclamation project, but a nice rejuvenation of Anthony Bender to me.
Yeah. Since the 21st, he's allowed 1 earned run, 16 and 2/3 innings, a .54 ERA, and like you see the FIP there, it's just been incredible. The stuff really looks like it was in his rookie year.
And really quickly on this last series, another good series for Xavier Edwards offensively. 4 games, 3 multi-hit games. He's still hitting 375 for the season. It's and today happens to be his 25th birthday. So we got a balloons for X right here. Happy birthday to Xavier Edwards. What is the state of X for you, LMF? You were somebody that was really pounding the drum for him to get an opportunity, whether it was last year or even at times this year. And he's really exceeding anybody's expectations right now, as he's been basically the hottest hitter in the National League now, going all the way back to early July. It's been awesome to see.
It's just that he's exceeding the expectation, which I set pretty high for him to begin with, and he's blowing me away. No one expected him to be hitting in the high 340s, 360s, 370s after a month and 6 weeks in. It's just nice to see, and he's doing it a little bit different than Luis Ariz, who we'll probably discuss later on the show. But he's doing it differently. He's hitting ground ball singles. He's not hitting those little bloop singles. He's doing it with his speed, which is even more impressive. And he's added a lot. Yesterday, even the base running, when the ball was overthrown at first by, I think it was the pitcher, he went from first to third without even looking, right? So his base running is on par. He's adding so much to what we didn't have at the beginning of this season that you wonder where we could have been if he was up here already.
Because part of the skepticism from some people, I'll point to myself right here, is that he couldn't play shortstop. He has been playing shortstop every day, and I'd say far more often than not, like he's making all the plays he's supposed to make right there. So that part has been such a big difference maker, honestly. And the reason we were talking about this before we started recording, about how Tim Anderson blocked off that shortstop position for a while, and they gave him pretty extended leash to show that there was something left in the tank, and there simply wasn't. But now, handling that position for the time being, been immensely valuable overall to this point in the season. Is there anything else I want to get to on this series now? I think
Nothing on Valente Belloso, Eli. What the heck, man? This guy shut down the Reds.
Yeah, I want to see one more start from Belloso before getting a little over the top excited about it. I've seen some people asking, how is he doing this? How is he doing this? He came out of nowhere. This is exciting. And there have been some very good things that have impressed me. I have been impressed with him overall. That being said, he's somebody that you could really see it in this last start, how many fly balls he was relying on as well. He is right near the top of the scale in terms of how many fly balls he allows. And to this point, very few of them have gone over the wall and led to home runs, but it is a pretty thin line, unfortunately, for a lot of these guys, that I think over a matter of time, I don't know how he's going to keep the ball in the ballpark if he's like mediocre in terms of actually missing bats. And if so many of them are going into the air, like even watching his last start, it really stood out how many of those balls were getting near the warning track, where it wasn't like total luck, but at the same time, his stuff is, guys are at least able to get the right launch angle on it, that I feel like over time it's going to be really problematic. In the meantime, he has a 3.05 ERA through 4 starts. So far, he's gone at least 5 innings in every single start. So there hasn't been a single blow up yet there. Not yet.
Not yet, but he's able to throw 88, 89 past Ellie De La Cruz when he's the hottest guy in the ballpark. The cutter and the location of the cutter and the changeup has just been so good. But you're right, he does let everything on the fly, everything in the air. Everything's in the air. Doesn't seem to be getting too lucky. Ironically, I don't know how. The expected numbers aren't as crazy. They seem to be pretty on par with his real numbers, but we'll see. I like him. I like him a lot. He's cool. He's the man. I think he'll have a few more good starts. He's going to finish the year in the rotation from here on out. I see that.
And the craziest thing is he relies on his fastball a ton. You mentioned it's
Yeah.
the high 80s, low 90s. He threw it 50% of the time against the Reds lineup like that. He dabbled in the cutter and the slider and the cutter a little bit, of course, the sweeper.
Of course.
But that guy, he's a competitor. You saw it after he struck out Jonathan India in second inning, coming out screaming off the mound for a team that's 3 games under 500. You need a guy like that. I've been very impressed with him as well. Just all-around great guy. So hopefully he can keep it rolling. I'm a little bit skeptical as well, but hey, man, outs are out. So we'll have to just keep waiting to see him.
He's a stud. He's a stud.
We have Alex Carver joining us, of course, from Fish on the Farm, which is good timing because I did want to have a little segment here checking in on all these new prospects that were recently acquired by the Marlins. Now that we're about 2 weeks in from some of the first trades, and we're more than a week in from some of the debuts of the draft picks that we've had so far, I put together this graphic of the hitters, just because on the pitching side, nobody has appeared in more than one game yet. There's some making like their second appearances coming up soon, but the samples are really tiny when it comes to the pitching side right here. But this is a general overview of all the trade deadline pickups and the draft picks combined. It's almost split right down the middle between ones that were acquired by those two methods right here, a lot of whom have big roles in this team's future. The big news really recently, for anybody that missed it, PJ Morlando, we learned last night, a lumbar stress reaction. So he is out for the rest of the season. Why don't we start on that, Carver, with PJ, who is going to ultimately have 2 innings of minor league ball under his belt during his first pro summer. That's a really frustrating setback.
That sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, this guy's got a long career ahead of him. It's not really that much of a disappointment to me, honestly. I mean, a lot of these guys coming out of the draft, especially pitchers, you won't see at all. So to see a lot of these guys go to Jupiter and start to get work in is encouraging. After the draft camp was cool. But this guy's got a long career ahead of him. Obviously, it sucks to get injured, and I'm sure that he's disappointed. But he's going to be with the team. He's going to be around the team. He's going to be soaking up information. I think that's probably what's best for him right now anyways. So you never want to see a guy get injured, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as it's been made out to be. I think he'll be back. I think he'll be fine. And, I mean, honestly, like just cleaning up the tools for him, we know he has some decent tools, but no real, true defensive home, I would say, for him is kind of the main thing. And then just, of course, working on the rest of his stuff at the plate. We know he has decent power, but just working on the rest of his stuff at the plate. So it's fine. I think he'll be back by spring training. I don't think it's that big of a deal as has been made out to be. Of course, you never want to see a guy get hurt, like I said, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. He'll be all right. The biggest guy that's been the biggest made the biggest impression is Jared Serna. That guy is very good, very, very good. He's gotten off to a flying start. I called him at the time of the trade. I was actually kind of killed for this on Twitter. I called him the most well-developed and the most balanced prospect that the Marlins traded for. And it turns out that I'm pretty much right. Not to pat my own self on the back, but it turns out that I'm pretty much right by this, initial output of these prospects. Jared Serna is really good. He will have a big league future. And I think he is still today the best developed prospect that they received back at the trade deadline. So I like that guy a lot. He's very, very good. I still like De Los Santos. McDowell, of course, got injured as well. Nobody talks about him because he's a 17th round pick, but he's also probably out for a little while. He went to the IL as well. Nobody cares about him because he's a 17th rounder rather than the first rounder, but he's also out. That sucks. I don't even know how you say this guy's name, but Eric Ratchak, I think is how you say his name. He just made his debut the other night. Augustin Ramirez has been good, even though he is absolutely 100% not a catcher and should not be a catcher more than any one more day in the minor leagues. They should move that guy immediately. He's not a catcher.
Let's stop on Ramirez right here. Let's go into Ramirez right here because I put out a tweet last night that was not very well received by some people that are more optimistic than you and I are about Ramirez's future at catcher. As you can see here, he is hitting very well. He's the one near the bottom right here, where it's a 10-10 OPS at AAA Jacksonville right now, with 4 extra base hits, most of those coming in just his last couple of games so far. So he has offensively, he's been off to a really good start. He was actually struggling a little bit at the AAA level before the trade. So to see him performing with the bat has been exciting. Splitting time between catcher and DHing again tonight. But last night in particular, I was able to watch most of that game from him. And there's one passed ball. There were 2 or 3 wild pitches that were really catchable, in my opinion, right here. So the receiving is problematic. The arm strength in a vacuum looks good, but you touched on this, that his inability to transfer the ball between his glove and his hands kind of makes that a moot point. How many dropped balls there are on caught stealing attempts that ultimately allow those guys to steal pretty easily against him. That's another limitation right there. The bat is exciting though, right? I mean, by OPS, he is really only behind Cerna in that category among these guys that are just joining the org. Coincidentally, both of them coming over in the Jazz Chisholm Jr. trade, for anybody that's unfamiliar about that. Nate, we were in the room when we were talking about what to think and what to do with Ramirez. Yeah, what is your general overview about, his strengths and weaknesses, and how soon we might see him in the majors now that he's raking at AAA and he's already on the 40-man roster?
I have a lot of confidence in the bat, just as everyone else does. Back-to-back 3-hit days, a couple extra base hits in that span as well. He's been really good with the bat. Like you said, he's kind of struggled in AAA with New York before coming back over in the deal. But that defense, I was in that room, and my goodness, it is not. We all are on the same page there. It's not what the Marlins need. But I did touch on a couple streams ago that after watching Nick Fortes hit, that I'd much rather have lackluster defense and good offense back there behind the dish, but you have to be able to at least fake it. And some of the clips that I saw yesterday via Eli were not pretty at all. I think that one of them should have definitely been a pass ball instead of a wild pitch. Whoever's scoring those games being very generous to him, because he pretty much allowed that guy to come around on his own. So, I think we could see him at the end of this year, along with a couple more guys on this list. It'd be very exciting. The Marlins are going to give him the chance to catch, whether we like it or not. They're going to give him the opportunity. I touched on that. They were looking for catchers in that trade, whether it was from Pittsburgh or from Kansas City, and they got a catcher, so that they don't want him to catch. And Bendix has shown that, maybe he's going to try guys in positions that they're maybe really not fit for, with PJ Orlando trying to work out in center and a couple other guys trying to stick up the middle. But I think they're going to give him the shot there, and hopefully, maybe Nick Fortes, helps Augustine figure it out or something. But he's going to have to significantly improve back there, because his bat's not, to the point where you can just carry him completely. So hope to show a little bit of improvement back there before he gets called back up. But other guys on these lists have been very exciting. Another thing I want to point out between De Los Santos and Ramirez, their walk to strikeout ratio has been a lot better than advertised. Not striking out as much and getting on base a little bit more. De Los Santos had I think 3-hit game, and he walked twice or just once on Saturday. But both their plate vision has been a lot better as of late. So every guy on this list really has been pretty impressive. So it's really good to see.
I wanted to get into Sean Miller's question right here on the Rise trade, because we're going to talk about a Rise on the other side of the break. To refresh people's memory, they got 3 prospects in return. Dylan Head, who almost immediately got hurt and is now out for the year with a hip issue. And then at the AA level, Nathan Martorella and Jacob Marcy, both there. Martorella had a really brutal midseason slump that he's climbed out of very recently to get his numbers back to respectability a little bit. But, I mean, overall, it's still been a super disappointing year for Martorella, who is thought to be a pretty safe bat. And yet, at this moment, I think he's hitting still below 200 with an OPS in the low 500s for not as much power or discipline as we thought. With Marcy, he's one of the organizational leaders in stolen bases. I think he leads the org in walks this year. So he gets on base. It's just that the hit tool is a pretty big question with him, even though those other surrounding factors are there and give him a good chance of being a major leaguer in some form. The upside, you really have to question if his hit tool is still struggling so much, and he relies so much on walks and other pitchers' mistakes in order to get on base right there. So yeah, that's still, it's not aging particularly well from the Marlins side. That trade is, we're a little over 3 months into it to seeing those guys play out. the return that we've seen so far.
If I may just say something about the players, you hope that Peter Bendix has put the people in place to get the best out of these guys, right? So, yeah, I'm in agreement based on your reporting. I trust Alex like anybody I've ever trusted for his reporting on our minor league system. But, I mean, they got Ramirez to be the catcher, right? That was the point of grabbing him. So I think they're going to do whatever they can to turn him into one, and it's going to be interesting. Again, can you hear me again?
We still got you. Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. Live TV. No, what I was saying is I think that they got the guy to be the catcher. So they're going to do whatever they can possible, and you hope they have the people in place to do so because we can't rely on Fortes anymore. Like we've had a bad bat at catcher for the longest time. So as far as the other guys, again, they were throw-ins. They went bulk to power up that farm system. So you just hope again that they put the people in place to get the best, and it's going to be unique to see in the next couple of years if these guys can come up.
So let us go into our flipped fish right here. You know the drill by now, picking a player who previously was with both the Marlins and the Padres at some point during their playing careers. There are some obvious directions that we could go with because there have been quite a few trades between these organizations in recent years to choose from. I'm not going to go super recent here. I have assigned a value of about 5 out of 10 on the difficulty scale right here with a former pitcher for both the Marlins and the Padres. Here's a brief overview to give you an idea. A 6'6" right-hander who played during the 2010s, from 2010 to 2019. Solid career overall, mainly as a starting pitcher, some relieving as well, 1,200 career innings. Not a big strikeout guy, but yeah, average-ish results as a starter for quite a while right here. A short tenure with the Marlins. That is the only hint that I'll give you. But think it over who this might be as we go into our break. And on the other side, a whole lot more on Luis Arraez, even a little Tanner Scott. Some of the roster moves today, whatever they are, and how they've totally remade this bullpen yet again at just a few days after the deadline. So a whole lot left to get to, and continue to feed us your questions and comments in the live chat here on FOF Live, presented by Berger and Hicks.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Welcome back to the show. Nate Carver, do you know who this might be?
I think I got it.
I do, but I'll let Nate go first if he knows it.
All right, I believe it's going to be. It was part of one of 2 trades between the Marlins and the Padres around the 2016 deadline. Give me Andrew Cashner.
Cashner,
you got it.
And Navi was all over
Ray in exchange for Luis Castillo and Josh Naylor. That was certainly a trade, but hey, Andrew Cashner.
After they traded for Colin Ray, it was a terrible deadline for the Marlins.
And that is when the Marlins were kind of going for it and the Padres were not. And yeah, and Josh Naylor has turned into a good player, though not really with the Padres. He debuted with the Padres, but then they sent him over to Cleveland, where he's now their basically everyday cleanup hitter-ish, or right around there in the middle of their lineup when he's healthy. So yeah, Marlins not too pleased with the way that one turned out. Plenty of flip fish in this current series, including most notably Tanner Scott and Luis Arraez, guys who were on the Marlins postseason team last year, who were on the Marlins major league team just a few months ago. Well, in Tanner's case, just a couple of weeks ago. And now they are over there with their new team. I think the Tanner Scott deal was really straightforward. Most people understood that. Pending free agent reliever who put himself in a position to earn a huge deal in free agency. And for a Marlins team that, at least for the near-term future, is not going to be competitive, there was just no situation where they were going to end up paying market value to re-sign him long-term. So they flip him. And I think in most people's opinion, they got a really nice return by bundling him and Hoeing, send him over to San Diego. The Luis Arraez trade, as I keep getting reminded, it continues to be a very sore subject for Marlins fans anyway, that you look at it. He still had a year of control beyond this year, and he was even more so than Tanner. He was indispensable to what they did in 2023 right now. So he was traded just a month plus into the season, and now he's on a team that is very likely to be postseason bound right now. He's hitting every day in the leadoff spot for the Padres. LMF, there's a whole lot of mixed emotions with Arraez. He's now coming back to Miami. We mentioned him, of course, because this is, even though they faced him in San Diego not long after the trade, this is his first visit to Miami as an opposing player. I know that you spoke with him a little bit before coming back. And how do you think that he should be treated and greeted by the fans in this return? And what do you think it means, from his side to now be coming here as a visiting player after having so much success as a Marlin?
For the thousands in attendance and the hundreds watching on TV, I mean, he should get a standing ovation from the fans, the Marlin fans. He was with us for a short time, but in that short time, he did very meaningful things for the organization, whether it's the first cycle, whether it's winning the best batting average award, best hitter in the league. He should be rewarded with a standing ovation. He should get a video. I hope they post it if they make him one. And really, he deserves all the greatness in the world for the type of person he is. He became part of our city, our culture, even if it was for a short time, or that city, that culture for a short time. He's excited. He's anxious. It's always weird. The behind the business, behind what we see, there's humans involved and there's emotion involved, and it's going to hit him at some point if it hasn't already. It was nice seeing the embrace with Skip. I saw some coverage and some pictures from that. Overall, I really hope that the fans give him that standing ovation, if not for just the first at bat, but every at bat during this series.
So the reaction that I got when I innocently pointed this out didn't go very well. But the thing with the Rise is what made him, he was so extraordinary last year. The way that he played the game, for somebody that already had prior success to coming over to the Marlins, like he was the absolute best version of himself in 2023, as you can see here by Baseball Savant's accounting, 30 runs above average as a hitter alone. And not only by getting hits, not only by getting singles, but by getting a whole lot of doubles, timely situations, and doing it more so than anybody else in the league while playing through some injuries too. There was that finger injury early in the year. I remember just, it was like a few days into his Marlins career. He hurts his finger. People worry that he might miss some time. He ends up gutting through it and hitting well over 400 for that portion of the year. Then at the end, he has that fluky injury with his ankle and misses less time than anybody thought he would. And at the very end of the year, he gives them just enough to push them through to the postseason. It was just such a wonderful ride from start to finish with him last year. And now the batting average still begins with a 3, and the Padres are still winning games. But at the same time, the defense isn't quite what it was last year when he was at least making all the routine plays at second base. Now he's at first and DH. There's not as much of those extra base hits, and there's really not as much of those singles either. And you add it all together, and when he left, when the Marlins traded him, it was thought that he was kind of off to a slow start, and he got it going initially right after the trade. You look at the overall numbers, and the overall numbers are the same as they were during that slowish start to the season. So it's not to say that the Marlins don't miss him, because they do. He would be one of their very best players right now on this roster, even in his current form. At the same time, if the Marlins wait a couple extra months to deal him, do they get even less in return? If they extend him the way that everybody was pushing for, the way that Arraez himself was advocating for, if they give him what they thought the market value was for an all-star caliber player entering the year, are they already regretting that extension? Had they made what would have been a really popular move right now. Yeah, it's all to say that as strong as the pull was for the Marlins to build around Arise, for those tangibles and also what he does intangibly, the attitude that he brings, the leadership that he brings, just the joy that he brings, is the way that he works well with all of his teammates, both in English and in Spanish. Like it's hard. You can't really put a number on that. That stuff is valuable. At the same time, I think that it is still reasonable to point out, and again, some people have disagreed with me, but I think it's just reasonable to point out that the guy that everybody fell in love with last year, part of that reason why they fell in love with him is because he was having the very best year of his career and producing in a way that was drawing those Tony Gwynn comparisons or those Wade Boggs comparisons, and that it just was going to be really hard to sustain that. And so far, there's some evidence that he's not quite on that Hall of Fame tier, and that's all right. But I think for those that I think there was so much anger towards the team when that deal was made, that there were baseball reasons behind that as well. And I think it's become a little bit easier to digest that now to see how he's being used with this new team, where he's a supporting player for the Padres. He's part of their success. He's not dragging them to the playoffs in the way that he did with the Marlins last year. Everything has worked so perfectly for that to happen last year.
I got destroyed too, Eli, when I said this when they traded Luis Arias. I got absolutely destroyed for saying it, but I called him a one-tool player on the field. And I will stick to that, and I'm being proven right now. This guy is absolutely a one-tool baseball player. He does one thing very, very well. He hits for average. He doesn't walk. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't hit for power. He doesn't do any of those things whatsoever. But when I called him a one-tool player, everybody absolutely destroyed me. Turns out, as he had a 362 BABIP last year, that's now normalized to 314, and he's barely hitting 300. To hit 300 in baseball is very, very good. Not taking that away from Luis Arias, but that's all that he does. And that's why he's a supporting player on a winning team rather than the star player on a losing baseball team. So this is where Arias fits in. He's a very good baseball player. He's an awesome dude. But he's a one-tool baseball player. End of story.
And I don't think this stuff should be glossed over. This comment from somebody like Sean Miller, who flew in from Texas to see this kind of series. This is a big reason why. Arise single-handedly, even just to see him as from the opposing perspective because of how unique he is. One thing that he is doing better than ever this year is he's not striking out. He continues to have far and away the highest contact rate in all of baseball. Even if that doesn't necessarily make him the best offensive player in all of baseball, it is still really impressive. It is still something that when we watch these players, there is an element of wanting to be amazed by what they do and what makes them different. And he is such a unique player in that regard. And he still is that super unique player that I don't think Sean is alone in this, that people pay to see him. And I imagine that the attendance this weekend is going to be a lot better than even other weekend series that the Marlins have hosted over the last few months, in part to see somebody that goes about their business in a way that is really aesthetically pleasing, not to draw even more anger from people that love Arise. Nate wanted me to share this. I guess why don't you walk through this comparison between Xavier Edwards and Arise? Not that they had to. Not that there's a universe where they could have coexisted, and we don't have to pin them against each other right here. But it's the leadoff man of the past and the leadoff man of the current situation, and one of them as an overall player is really lapping the other so far this season.
Yeah, it's human nature just to compare, I guess. I don't want to take anything away from Luis, but he the first thing I remember about Luis Arias is how really he transformed the Marlins lineup last year. Kind of just him getting on base and him putting the ball in play, trying to set everything into motion. He really kind of did carry the Marlins to that playoff berth. But this year, kind of to what Carver said, he's not really been that guy. He's kind of been more of the one-tool guy. We saw his defense when he was with the Marlins earlier this year was very drastically different from what we saw last year. Not as good. And then of course, Xavier Edwards coming up and instantly having almost, he has already one WAR higher than Luis Arias and playing 70 less games or so. And the big thing with Edwards too, we've touched on it. That guy's speed, man. His ability to turn singles into doubles and turn infield what would be outs for guys like Arise, into singles, and him being able to steal bases, already has 9 more stolen bases than Arise, has been really key. And like I said, I don't want to take anything away from Luis himself, but kind of a replaceable thing, at least when the Marlins have a guy like Xavier Edwards, who, better defensively this year, obviously speedier. We're not going to take anything away from Luis's contact, but I think the Marlins, they caught a lot of heat for this at the time, but we're kind of seeing the vision come into picture, I guess, with how Xavier Edwards is playing, and maybe Luis Arraez not really being that superstar, that big guy, that focal point in a lineup like he was a season ago. So I think it's definitely worth noting. But again, don't want to take anything away from Luis. He's a fantastic player, fantastic guy, fantastic leader. But yeah, it's baseball.
You can kind of say he turned back into the player he was with Minnesota. The numbers that he's doing now are more comparable to what he was doing there than he did with us last year. So, and he meant a lot to last year's team, but if he was on this year's team, they weren't performing with him there. So I think at the end of the day, it all will work out, and I'm super happy with X and the way he's performing. It's basically the same player, just better speed and better stats for Xavier.
And just to finish off with this comparison, our pal Isaac Azut encourages you to vote on his Twitter poll between Arise and Edwards. A bit of a dumb mistake right there to make it a 24-hour poll, even though this game is about to start. It's one thing that I'm very particular about, that people keep in mind how long you want those polls to be open, so that you actually get something that's kind of an interesting result right here. So this one will obviously ends right, I think, towards the end of the second game of the series. Great job, Isaac. Anyway, I think it is something to follow, and I think people will be playing. It's something fun, like playful, for people to pay attention to which of these guys racks up more hits during the course of the series, given that they're both hitting at the top of the lineup. They're both going to play every day. And that should have a pretty interesting, significant impact on which team ultimately wins the series. I did want to point out that how well the Padres are playing as of late. This is a quick summary of their day-to-day throughout this entire season so far, with green obviously being wins and reds being losses. And for the first couple of months of the season, the Padres were basically a 500-ish team. Made the trade for Arise right here in early May, and then went through a pretty bad slump in June, and then got hot, and then got cold again entering the All-Star break. Pretty much since the All-Star break, they've been the hottest team in baseball. 14-3, if I have that right, including 14-2 in their last 16. A whole lot of one-run wins, a whole lot of clutch wins right there. Carver has some loose ties to the San Diego area, even though it doesn't follow them quite as obsessively as the Marlins. But Carver, you remember that last year, the Padres were one of baseball's most disappointing teams, most frustrating teams, that they had what people thought were arguably the most talented roster in the game. And then they had to get a crazy, furious rally at the very end of the year just to finish above 500. But they were out of the mix for most of the year. And then this year, as of this moment, they are holding on to the top National League wildcard spot, despite having to get rid of Juan Soto and having Fernando Tatis hurt for a lot of it. So who else, aside from Arise, is responsible for the fact that this Padres team is threatening to make the playoffs for, I think, what would be the third time in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of guys in that lineup that I think are pretty damn good. I like Manny Machado a lot. I really do. I think that's a veteran player that he's had his ups and downs, but overall, just a very, very, very good baseball player. I really like Machado, and this year he's been damn good. So Manny Machado is right there in the middle. I also really like Jackson Merrill. He's a prospect. I like that guy a lot. You see him here hitting in center field, playing in center field. I like him a lot. But really, I think what it comes down to, the reason that this team has been as good as it is because they have a general manager that literally is not afraid to go for it. And like you said, Eli, growing up in San Diego, I grew up around a lot of really bad Padres teams. The one year that they made it was 98. They made it to the World Series. They got swept by the Yankees, and it was terrible. But, man, since this guy has been instituted, he has not shied away from the fact that he's going to try to do everything he can to win and not sell. And it's a real credit to him. You see the trades that he made this year. They're also trying to build a bit from within. you see Merrill and other guys coming up. I think that this team is in a much different spot than they used to be when I lived in San Diego, when it was in the Ken Caminiti and Tony Gwynn days. Even though those were great players, they didn't have anything around them. Whereas nowadays they have guys in a way more complete lineup than anything. So I like the Padres a lot. It's awesome to see them do what they did after a lot of years of frustration. Something you wish the Marlins would do after a lot of years of frustration, but hasn't really worked out that way in Miami. But they're not far away from what they used to be in terms of where the Marlins are right now, in terms of what they can be, which in terms of where we think the Marlins could go. So Machado, to answer your question, is the main guy. Merrill as well, I like as a prospect. They got Scott, they got Arias. They just build it up, which is a true credit to Preller because he's one of the best in the business.
One of the busiest in the business for sure. He is always making deals. And you have to admire what they do with their farm system where guys constantly exceed expectations, and that allows them to trade a lot of those prospects to get proven stars in the first place, to have all these pop-up players that improve a lot from what they used to be. They're always replenishing that supply, even if only a few of them actually make it up to the big leagues as Padres, such as Jackson Merrill being one of those few exceptions right there. I want to shout out Jerks and Profar as well, who has been around forever, who is having the best year of his career, even though he's about 11 years into his major league career. All of a sudden, he's slowing down a little bit after being all-star caliber in the first half of the season, but still, I mean, he's been there every single day and has made such a big difference for them so far this year. He's been one of the few constants in that lineup, along with Machado and Arias, for better or worse. Arias has been in there a whole lot as well. We could pop over to the Marlins side of this as we're closing in on first pitch right here. It's a little tough to look at when you're facing a left-handed starter as they are tonight. Are they? Let me just double check. Yeah, Martin Perez, of course. So they are facing a lefty, and you have Derek Hill batting cleanup. I think that kind of says it all about where they're at right now. And Derek Hill's off to a very good start as a Marlin. It's just he's a journeyman who has been somewhat offensively challenged for most of his career to this point. And if he's batting that high up in your lineup, it kind of speaks to your alternatives right there. You got a David Hensley sighting in there. With Otto Lopez, he's been slightly better during this past series than he had been previously. It was a deep slump offensively for him. That is, maybe he's coming out of it. Let's see if he does. To me, it's a pretty big weekend for him if he wants to continue to be playing on a close to everyday basis, because there's just now, after that really exciting start to his Marlins career, a lot of that goodwill has slowly dripped away as he struggles at the plate. But Jake Berger, talk to me about Jake Berger, LMF, because he, for a lot of the first half, he was also one of the disappointments on this team, and things really clicked for him about a month ago. He's one of the major league's home run leaders over the last calendar month, and all of a sudden his numbers are a lot closer to his career averages than they had been before. So he's still with this team after the deadline. He could be with this team for years to come. And it's a hot streak that in some ways is right on par with where he was at this time a year ago. So much power, so much run production, even without really any protection in the lineup. At least you have that one guy that's hitting home runs left and right over these recent weeks.
I'll tell you, if you're making bets on any Marlins player to hit a home run, he's the guy to do it right now, and it's great for fantasy. It's nice to see him get out of the funk that he was in for the most part of the season. I know he started off a little hot, and then he had the injury, and never was the same guy until now, post the injury comeback. So it's nice seeing him. It's nice to see he's trying. He has to be the leader. It's thrusted upon him. He is the leader in that locker room now. He's one of the most tenured Marlins, away from Jesus Sanchez, right? It's crazy. It's just nice to see, it would be great to see him continue it, but we'll enjoy it while we have it. Back to Otto, what you were saying. I hope that he bounces back from whatever funk he's been in, because he was doing really well for us for a while there too. I expect at least one home run from Jake Berger this series. Probably not tonight against the lefty, but man, when you turn that page and you see the difference of a winning franchise right now, like San Diego versus our hitting stats here, it's kind of depressing. And you hope that that changes over the next couple seasons.
It is surprising to me now that I think about it, they couldn't find room for Jesus Sanchez in here, even against the lefty. Do you have to have an outfield of Kyle Stowers, Derek Hill, and David Hensley all at the same time? Just quickly, Nate, on Kyle Stowers, because it has been a rough start. He's the one piece of their big trade deadline haul that went straight to the big league level, and he's been playing close to every single day. But it's been a struggle offensively for him. A whole lot of swing and miss, especially on pitches up in the zone. Yeah, how is there any light at the end of that tunnel? It seems that yeah, how much longer do you think the Marlins are going to stick with it before maybe considering getting him to rethink some things, reset down in AAA?
Well, to answer your last question, I think they're going to let it ride for a good amount of time. Again, this team's 30 games under 500. This is a guy that they just got back, end of July. I think they're going to let him ride. Unless it continues to be absolutely abysmal, then maybe they send him to Jacksonville. Maybe something else happens. But yeah, Jab touched on it last stream that his last couple of games against Atlanta looked a lot better, but it's kind of just went back to what he was doing when he first came over to Miami. I still think he's trying to do a little bit too much. Maybe make that first impression, whatever. Prove to Baltimore that he can do it at the big league level, and prove to the Marlins and the Marlins fans that he has, he's got that we should be excited about. But I still think he's just too much swing and miss. He's not drawing a lot of walks. He did get on base, I think, twice yesterday, both a hit by pitch and a walk. So, I mean, that's something. But his swing has been a little long. Someone touched on that today also, that maybe it's just a couple swing adjustments, maybe just keep settling in. It's still pretty overwhelming, but that guy was a former top prospect. He can hit the ball, but it is unfortunate that the biggest concern when he came over from Baltimore was his swing and miss, and he really has been doing a lot of that. But he's a great guy. He's been a good spirits the whole time. So I think he'll be all right. Just give him a couple, week or two more, and if he continues to struggle, maybe send him down to Jacksonville, get his confidence back up. But I'm not too worried just yet. But hopefully can start, maybe just working opposite field, not really try to do too much, and we can see some production from Kyle.
You see under the K percentage column a 40% strikeout rate from Stowers. That's overall this season. That includes the Orioles numbers. It's been a little bit higher than that, even coming to the Marlins. Last thing that jumped out to me on the Padres side, every single guy is a sub 20% K rate in this entire lineup. Arise, of course, he's on his own planet, a 5% K rate. But even everybody else in this current group that they're using, sub 20%. I don't even have to look it up. I'm sure they are leading the big leagues for lowest K percentage to have this many guys up and down the lineup that make contact right here. So that is something to monitor. And I guess especially in the case of tonight with Edward Cabrera on the mound, that's the last thing we'll touch on. The probable starters for this series. It's Eddie for game 1 against Martin Perez. Rodri Munoz on Saturday against the knuckleballer Matt Waldron. And then on Sunday, Dylan Cease, who has been incredible over the last month or so against Max Meyer, as we noted, coming off his worst start of his young career right here. With Eddie, let me make sure that I had this right. His last start was the awesome one. He's now had a couple straight that have been really good. Yeah. The last start that he had was one of his best of the season. It was 5 scoreless innings, 8 strikeouts against the Braves in Atlanta. And the previous outing was going really well until he had that minor knee injury scare that made him leave a little bit early right there. But yeah, I think for this guy, people know the drill right here, where for the most part in his young career, his control has sabotaged any chances of him working deep into games. And he doesn't trust his stuff quite as much as you would think for somebody that has such immense stuff, falling behind in counts. And on top of that, there's been the injuries and constantly in and out of being available due to one nick or bruise or another. It's always something that's been sidelining him to this point. There have not been many times in his career where he's tied together 3 straight good starts. So that will be, he has an opportunity to do that right here against the Padres, against a quality opponent right here. Yeah, I've already made my concerns clear that I think he's likely headed for a reliever role in 2025 and beyond. But LMF, he has this, you would think, this last chance down the stretch to, they really have very few other options in this rotation. So by default, Cabrera is going to get this chance to sink or swim as a starter. And prove some people wrong.
With the trade of Trevor, it opened up the door for more Eddie Cabrera, and you hope that he answers the call and the doorbell. You want him to have better starts like he did last time. It would be nice if a Marlin gives us a quality start, right? And the first time in a month and a half, I believe, or something crazy like that. But look, ups and downs with Eddie. To me, I'm not high on him. I'll say that they should have traded him to the Pirates at the beginning of the season, and I'll go even that far back. But he's here. We hope we get good Eddie and not I walk everybody Eddie. So good luck to him and wishing him the best. We need it. Not really, but we need it.
Yeah. So these next 3 games, you see it right there. Tonight with the 90s night windbreaker ticket package thingy. And then on Sunday, they have those. Do I have a picture of that weird Pepito plush doll that they're giving away on Sunday? The first 5,000 people in the stuffed munchkin.
You may be surprised.
While you look for that, I guess the last thing to point out about Stowers before we get too far, it hasn't been good. I think just 1 walk, doesn't have a hit yet for the Marlins. This is his hometown team. He grew up in El Cajon. I actually used to live in the same city. So maybe this is a series that he starts to get it going. We can only hope. But, I mean, there's really nothing left for him to prove in AAA. He needs to stick up here and get this time in the majors. I'm glad the Marlins are still sticking with him, even though it hasn't been a good start. This was a highly prized guy that they got at the deadline, and we'll see if he can get it going this series.
A lot of my staff is on the same page about this. So the Marlins marketing push for the damn Roosters instead of just Billy the Marlin is so perplexing. People I think there'd be more interest at Marlins games among Marlins fans for giveaways involving Billy and stuff like this. But if you're big on the Roosters and this one being Pepito, then on Sunday, first 5,000 and the attendance get whatever this thing is. But all right, it's something. They're making some sort of effort to bring people in. I think it's going to be a well-attended series for the reason that we went over against a hot team, familiar faces on the other side.
The easy decision is just to bring back the sea creature race. I think that was much more light. I think when back in the days of the neon green walls, I think that was a great thing. I'm with you. I don't understand why they're trotting out 3 Roosters. See, look at Chase. That's a no-brainer if you ask me. Look at that.
I miss my Sharky.
That shark was dominant. I think he won like 70% of the races or something. That guy was whoever was in that costume was very good. But yeah, and also I'll go back to the pitchers. Matt Waldron absolutely dominated the 18 Marlins back in, I believe, May when they last faced off. So if you want to watch a good knuckleballer, head out to Lone Depot Park tomorrow. You're gonna get a show, that's for sure.
Okay. So I think Isaac popping in just in time for prediction time right here.
Hell yeah!
And here we go.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Let's get that leaderboard. A lot of people can make that same claim because it is so tight at the top right there. Top 10 separated by 3 points. Top 8 separated by 1 point. So that includes Sean Millerick in that big tie in the top. Big cluster, top 8. LMF right there behind him. Chad Turner is in the chat for part of the show as well. Chad has had 2 perfect picks in his last 3 tries. It's getting really tight, and I am right behind the fray so far right here. 3-game series. Pretty straightforward one right here. I think I know where a lot of people are going to go MVP-wise, but I want to hear you say it for yourself right here. Parker Heiser had some technical troubles on this one. But so he's not able to join us for prediction time. But I'm sure he's going to submit his picks as well to remain in contention in these standings right here. So let me just cue up the background music that we always have. And I'll start with me. World Series predictions.
Well, the Padres are one of the hottest teams in baseball, and they're throwing 3 of their best arms this weekend. But they're going to take 2 out of 3. And Series MVP is not – he wasn't there in the last time they played back in May, but Xander Bogaerts of the Padres into a huge extension a couple years ago, hitting 400 since the All-Star break. That guy's going to stay hot. Dominate Mats Meyer, Rodri Munoz, and such. That's just Series MVP.
Isaac Azoot from the car. Your predictions.
I'm with Nate. I definitely think the Padres are the hotter team right now. They will take 2 out of 3. And I think that knuckleballer is going to win MVP, Matt Waldron.
LMF, your series predictions? Let's hear them.
The Padres are coming into Miami to face a Marlins team. It's a revenge series for a couple players. How many saves for Tanner Scott? I'm going to call 2, as the Padres take 2 out of 3. But it's going to be Luis Arise coming back with vengeance as your MVP.
Okay, Alex Carver, your turn, sir.
The Marlins are getting swept, and against 3 righties, I will go with Merrill as the MVP.
Finish things off, I have the Padres taking 2 out of 3. The Marlins have surprised me during this post-All-Star break, being a lot more feisty than I think they have been. But their bullpen, we didn't even get into it on the show. I cannot believe it. On their bullpen, yet again, going through some upturn. And it's a mess right now between that and the rotation options that they have, and this kind of lineup that they have to throw out, at least against lefties. It's not very competitive. I think they lose 2 out of 3 to San Diego in this one. Going with Carver right here on Jackson Merrill. He's been great lately for this team. Really standout rookie season overall for Jackson Merrill, and I think he keeps that going this weekend in Miami. That is our show, FOF Live, right here. Yeah, I did not get into all the bullpen moves, but I don't think there's a huge appetite from the audience about Xavier Curry, waiver claims sent down to AAA Jacksonville. A couple new guys that we'll be seeing for the first time that were also waiver claims just a week ago. John McMillan, who I'm pretty interested in. I think he could be a good power pitcher in time, but been a lost season for him before getting DFA'd by the Royals. And then Brett DeGuss, who is DFA'd by the Mariners before being claimed. Both these guys, they went to AAA originally. They got called up by necessity to fill out this bullpen. A bunch of guys in this bullpen are going to be unavailable today because they worked back-to-back the previous 2 nights. So that's a little bit of analysis that maybe we could have included earlier in the show, but we don't want to take this stuff a little too seriously. The team is 30 games below 500. People are just really interested in a rise right here. Right before finishing off the show, I want to make people aware our next stream is not on Tuesday for the Philly series. We have one coming up on Monday night. Marlins Jeopardy returns.
Cue the music.
Please join us right here 3 days from now, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Monday for Marlins Jeopardy. In the meantime, enjoy your weekends. Thanks to LMF for hopping on. Alex Carver, Nate Karsmer. Got a tiny bit of Parker Heiser. I don't think he actually said any words, but he was here, made an effort. Isaac Azoud as well. FOF Live. We appreciate the support. As always, go fish.